running the lab, the Gazzaley lab at UCSF for a long time.
Yep.
And then within that, you have the Neuroscape program.
Yeah, so we really evolved what started as my lab into a center now. So we had a lab within Gazzaley lab focused on future of technology and neuroscience, and it just exploded. So now Gazzaley lab, I let that go.
Oh, okay.
And we are Neuroscape. And so
Okay.
we have almost 45 people in our group and over 10 faculty members, and it's really exciting to see a center emerge out of a laboratory.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I met you, and you were like talking about hiring people from Electronic Arts to help
Yeah.
you build video games.
Yep.
And now here you have a FDA approved
Yeah.
digital therapeutic
Yeah.
for ADHD, and all eyes I think have been on you at Gazzaley
Yeah.
for this, and then suddenly, what? You tell the story.
It was I just got off stage, and it was fun to tell this after so long of predicting that one day we would have this FDA approved product, a new de novo pathway through the FDA, so a new category of medicine. And from the idea in 2008 until FDA approval was 13 years. That was like climbing Everest to do the
that's
research.
the time it takes to get a drug approved.
Yeah, exactly, and it wasn't so dissimilar. So, we had to do all the fundamental research, file the intellectual property, build a company, do all the clinical trials, go through the FDA as a de novo pathway. And then in 2020, right in the depths of COVID pandemic, we had approval, and we could market to doctors to say we now have another treatment for those children that you take care of and are largely giving them stimulants. And we have a treatment with virtually no side effects of a video game to help improve their attention abilities. And it was just one of the most exciting moments of our lives. And now it's been 3 years, and we've learned a lot of things about how, not necessarily surprising things, like every company knows this, but the translation from the lab into people's hands have, I would say, several valleys of death. We've several people in our conference today sort of referred to that. One of them is leaving the lab, like that very difficult transition of getting the funding you need to even have a startup. And another one is that time between FDA approval and insurance reimbursement, where you're forced, because you're in the prescription domain, to charge a certain amount just to even process prescriptions, and people with needs, financial needs, can't pay for it.
What would that have cost? What was it going to cost through a doctor?
Well, we were basically covering what the prescription, as if it was reimbursed, and that was $100 for a month. And it's really a 1 month treatment, maybe with a second or third booster dose. But $100 a month. There are people that don't hesitate. They're like, these are my kids, I spend that much on my hair, whatever. Some people have the perspective that this is important, I have lots of things in my life that cost this range, I'm going to do it. And then other people are like, I cannot do that.
Right.
And so we were giving away a lot of product just to help those people waiting for insurance reimbursement. And we know, not just for us, but research has shown that if you look at medical devices, the time between approval and reimbursement is like 5 to 7 years. And if you're a giant company, you could just eat that loss, make it up later. If you're anywhere not a giant company, then that's a valley of death. And that's the situation that we found ourselves in over these last several years.
Yeah. So you would think the FDA would be very interested in seeing the field of digital therapeutics thrive, and that maybe there's some kind of accelerated approvals that need to take place. Is anybody working on that?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of conversation about it. At the very end of the day, the FDA doesn't really want to approve things that that don't have the efficacy, and the insurance reimbursement is not the FDA. And it is a broken system. I mean, I've always known it as a consumer of healthcare products that it's sort of broken. Like I felt like I needed this cholesterol med, but my insurance said no. It's like everyone has their own experience for like, oh, insurance is not really my friend, right? But now I see it through the eyes of an inventor and someone that started a company to bring this to people in need. So we have people in need, we have a product that works, and we can't deliver it to them, especially those that can't afford it, because of the system, because FDA approval is not anywhere close to being able to have a viable, sustainable product that keeps a company in business.
So why does it take insurance companies so long?
I am not an expert on this, but I could tell you from reading and my experience that they really don't want to reimburse for anything that they're not already reimbursing for. There's not so much of a motivation for them to be innovative and to push the frontiers and to address needs. It's really maintaining status quo is really what I see going on. And they will, but they have their own timeline that they've learned for a long period, and they're pushing it out because this is just more money that they're allocating. And so.
But isn't it a lot cheaper to give a 1 to 3 dose video game than it is to have a kid on Adderall for Ritalin for years?
It may be.
But we don't know.
Yeah, and so the lack of knowing is really what, at least what I see, is leveraged of we're not ready for that yet. It's not like no, like that would be crazy. Like who could say no to like kids in need and a treatment with no side effects? It's not no, it's just like a little bit more, you know, it's just like, and some of it's fair, like time in the marketplace is the best way of understanding the real impact of your treatment. Randomized controlled trials are not good for that. They're good for seeing a signal of efficacy and a side effect profile, but you do need to be in the world before you know those things. But part of being in the real world is having people be able to afford it. And so this is why the system is broken, and everyone sort of knows it. It's different in other countries. You know, other countries could have just blanket like approvals and followed, you know, relatively rapidly by blanket reimbursement. That's not how it works here.
Yeah.
You know, there's Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance, and HPOs. It's just a very complicated.
Okay, I'm getting hives. I don't want to talk about insurance anymore.
Yeah.
Let's talk about virtual reality.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. Well, all right, but before I leave that though.
Yes.
So it was going to cost $100 through
prescription. Let's finish up that
but
topic. Yes.
What is it? What are you charging now?
So what happened was we watched the one company that had a digital therapeutic approved by the FDA before us. It wasn't for a video game, it was for cognitive behavioral therapy, go bankrupt. They disappeared from the world. They don't exist anymore. They were always sort of just like right there, and now they're not. And we're like, we're not going to be that company. We're not going down for a model that's broken, right? We have a product that works. We have people in need. And so we released an over-the-counter version of our video game treatment for adult ADHD, where we had data, and there's increasing need, especially during COVID. And so now it's an entirely different world. Now we have a direct-to-consumer medical treatment. It's still in the FDA domain. It's an OTC, and it's working. You know, we've had over 200,000 downloads within the first 4 months, and it's really great, and it's much less expensive. There's lots of different plans, but on average, like $20 a month now.
Wow.
And so we think that this is the model going forward, and you know, the field is looking, and you know, then there's also like this adjacent wellness claims where it's not a medical clinical population like ADHD, like attention. And so we're exploring all of these because we have something that we've put a decade of work into, both on the development and the research side, and we want to get it to people. Right. So that's where we're at now.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the whole idea of non-invasive therapeutics. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something we're at a, you know, BrainMind conference.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people talking about implants, and you know, there's a lot of people talking about pharmaceuticals.
Exactly.
And
yeah, we fill a niche. I wouldn't say we're not a holy grail, or you know, it's and you know, the main theme of my talk, certainly at the end, was that integration across multiple modalities is the future, right? Drugs could do so much more in my mind if they were coupled with experiential treatments like what we created, because you could lower those doses, bring down the side effects, use them as like a more global activator, and potentially get synergistic effects. And I say potentially because no one has even really done this work. Same thing with invasive, right? Invasive tools still need the person to interact with the environment around them, so they would be much better coupled with non-invasive techniques that act in closed loop, that can, you know, really optimize their function. So that is where I feel like these fields are going. And certainly a conference like this is perfect because we're sitting next to each other saying, oh wow, this would work great together.
Right. So that's really interesting because talking to a lot of people across a variety of medical innovations, and I'm hearing people less saying, we're going to replace this, and more saying, we're also going to be offering this. Would you think of it as that way, that multiple modalities need to be brought to bear on these?
I think that's the future. It's not very well researched yet.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm a researcher, I'm a scientist. It's like an amazing opportunity. But now looking at the intersection of all these, like we're doing work with psychedelics and how that interacts with sensory immersive environments. That is the future to me. I am much more, just like I am as a person, I like collaborating. Like I don't work in a silo as a scientist and never have. Mm-hmm. Same thing with technologies that I create. I want to see them as part of a larger ecosystem. None of them are going to solve the problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it seems to me that there are lots of reasons not to collaborate. There are institutional reasons, there are intellectual property reasons, there are financial reasons.
Yeah.
And I think that's not how we do things, mentality.
Yeah.
So is it going to take a younger generation that went through college not being able to solve their problem sets without collaboration before that starts to break down?
Yeah, that and just need. The new technologies and the new tools that we're talking about are inherently multidisciplinary projects. We have programmers and artists and musicians and storytellers on our teams, along with engineers and neuroscientists and psychologists and machine learning experts. Like that environment of what you need for development of these type of tools just breeds collaborative spirits. And I think examples like, showing the world of how much more you can do together than apart. And, that's an example that I like to lead because to me, it's just the cost of us not succeeding is too great. The need in this world is so tremendous, and not just the clinical world. Like, just think about the news you've read in the last week, right? It's horrible. And so we've got to figure out how to help the brain and the mind at every level. And so I don't think there's time for ego and to build like this little silo around yourself and your team and say, we do this. Like, we have to work together. I find anyone that might be a potential collaborator and turn them into a colleague. I've always done that. It's really not that hard. It just takes talking to them and say, hey, I love what you're working on. I think you're awesome. Like, you want to hear what and then figure it out. This is like a big brain. There's a lot to do.
I think it has to do with the zero-sum thinking that I think has dominated so much.
It's an illusion, right? There is so much to do. So many different cognitive operations, clinical conditions, even within a condition, there's so many different approaches. And like I said, one of them is not likely to solve the problem. That I wish it was, just we haven't seen that for the brain and the mind. We've been 70 years, we've been really in a siloed system of believing that there was some magic brain pill out there that's just going to fix it. Like schizophrenia gone, autism gone, depression gone, Alzheimer's gone. That does not happen.
And then wasn't a pill, they thought there may be a gene, and then we could just
edit
that gene. That's going to solve the problem.
It doesn't happen. It's just not how the brain works.
Yeah. It's not how life works.
Yeah, it's not, and our brain is a mirror to life. Like that's how it evolved. It could work for the heart. It could work for vascular systems, simpler systems like that.
Plumbing.
Plumbing, even infectious disease. You can find something to annihilate a microbe. Like we've grown up in the world where pharmaceuticals were just fixes and cures, and they were easy. You just take it in the morning and it's gone. And we wanted that for the brain because it's easy, and we're just inherently lazy creatures. And like, if you could just take your depression fix in the morning and go about your day and not have to work for it, then sure, we want that. But that is not working, and I don't think it's going to work.
I totally agree with you on this, except that now we have Wegovy and Ozempic, which look like sort of one-stop shopping for all your health needs if you have metabolic dysfunction and cognitive decline.
Yeah, but I still think that there are going to be limitations there and side effects and dependencies. I mean, not even quoting the literature, I see it in my own friend group. It creates dependencies, right? That's an issue in itself, and it's expensive, and there's all sorts of interactions. I'm always really careful to say I do not hate the idea of drugs or pharmaceuticals. I just don't like it siloed. I don't like the thinking that there's a magic remedy. It's too naive, too simplistic. It would be much better if we worked together and learned how to get synergistic effects. But there's almost no research in that domain. It's very hard to break down those boundaries and really, really collaborate. But it is going to happen, and it's happening already just because the need is so great. For me, the most important thing about BrainMind in events like this is that it brings a diverse group of people together to discuss something that they're passionate about. And this is nothing that can be accomplished by an individual or a single company or a single academic university. This is a team sport. And so I just love environments like this.